I'm Claudia Pasmani, Executive Director of the Amherst Area Chamber. Welcome. We're so glad you could join us early this morning. One of the impetus for us hosting this particular topic was amid this pandemic has been an incredible amount of email types of hacks, and certainly the Chamber is no stranger to those, and one of those actually became an issue for us. And when I reached out to Greenfield Northampton Cooperative, Brandon had indicated that what we had experienced was spear phishing, not just phishing. So he's going to get into a lot of that, but we realized that they're above average in terms of the ability to sort of penetrate your everyday email and to become sort of part of your average email, and then we end up acting upon things that might really be scam email. And also, so how do we protect ourselves? And this really came up for us at the Chamber, and we really wanted to share best practices for everyone. Maura, who's on our board, who's on the call today, Maura Geslick of Greenfield Northampton Cooperative, she reached out and said that Brandon, who is the Executive Vice President of Information Technology at Greenfield Northampton, would be the perfect, ideal person to bring this topic to life. So without further ado, Brandon.
Thanks, Claudia. As introduced, my name is Brandon Lively. I'm the Executive Vice President of Information Systems at Greenfield and Northampton Cooperative Bank. I also act as the bank information security officer, so I'm responsible for making sure that the staff is trained with security awareness and best practices for information security, among other things. I have never done this via Zoom before, so we'll find out together how this is going to go. A little nervous because I'm not on like the seminar circuit. This isn't something I normally do. I have done some specific training for like a senior center, some elder fraud training. I've done something like that, but I've never done anything very broad before. So I've tried to generalize this. And the only other thing I wanted to say before I get started is, I don't want to come off as lecturing you that you have to do all of these things to make yourself secure. You really do have to, analyze your own business scope and business risk and decide if these things fit for your business. So these are recommendations, not things that you must do to be secure. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in. There we go. So this is the agenda. I'm going to do an overview on email and phishing. I'm going to talk about different risks that are associated with a successful phishing attack. I'm going to go over several fraudulent email examples of what you might see in your inbox. And then lastly, I'll go over some best practices to protect your business. And then the last slide is just some references that I thought might be helpful in case you want to do some sort of cybersecurity or information security planning. And then I'll take questions. So I wanted to start off by saying that email is really dangerous. If there was one thing I could take away from all of my end users, it would be email, because it really does open your business up to different kinds of attacks, fraudulent transactions, malware injection, all that kind of thing. I'd be lynched if I took this away because, it's an incredibly efficient communications tool, and really it's required to do a lot of things in the world today. But criminals know this, and they use email to really try to infiltrate your organization. Regular email is not encrypted, it's not secure. I equate it to sending a postcard through the mail. It's a, an outdated analogy perhaps, but a good one. And then, I don't want to bash anybody, but email users in general tend to react to emails before considering the implications of opening attachments or clicking links. You're in the middle of your day, you get 1,000 emails, and you just click away without thinking anything about it. And that's what information security training is supposed to prevent. So hopefully this is helpful. This is a statistic that I like to show during all of my email training. This is for a typical month for the bank. We received about 80,000 emails for a particular month. 66,000 were blocked outright because they were known to be malicious or from a bad IP address. We also received 66 viruses, and I'll say that those were blocked. They did not get into our network. Those were blocked because they were noticed by our system. 4,800 were tagged, and a tagged email simply means that your internet service provider has put some sort of indication that they think it's not legitimate or garbage. And I'll kind of go over that in a little bit. So only about 15,000 emails were allowed through our network. So only about 18% of all incoming email is considered valid. And I can even tell you a lot of that was spam. So it's, you know, I don't have any other statistics to look up, but I would be willing to bet that this is pretty consistent with all email service. You know, especially if your business has, your business's email address is out there on your website and published, chances are it's being used for spam and malicious activity. So phishing. Phishing is really the primary way fraudsters try to use email to make a successful attack. Phishing in general is when a criminal attempts to gain your private information or access to your PC by posing as a legitimate business via a mass email designed to trick an individual into providing their account information, opening a malicious attachment, or clicking on a fraudulent link. So this is really consumer-based. This is when a fraudster goes to a business website, copies a logo, and creates an email and sends it out to like 5 million people. And they hope that, you know, a small percentage of those people will respond to that phishing email. Hence the term phishing. They cast it out there and hope they get a couple nibbles. You know, a 1% return on a phishing attack is a good day for a criminal. Spear phishing, on the other hand, is an email or other electronic communication that targets a specific individual at a business with the intent to collect private data for fraudulent activity, to inject malware, or to have a fraudulent transaction process. So where phishing is more general, spear phishing is very specific. It's crafted to try to get an individual or a couple of individuals at a specific business to respond to it. And this is what I'm going to focus on today. Since we're talking about securing your business, I figured spear phishing is more appropriate. So an example of spear phishing, and this has actually happened at the bank, is an email that looks like it's from our CEO with instructions to do this urgent wire transfer. You know, you do this transaction right now. And luckily, you know, we're small enough where everybody knows everyone, and we do a lot of information security training, so it's never worked. But, you know, if you are in a large company or a large business where you might not know your CEO's voice or you know, his email address or cell phone number, you know, it could trick you. I also thought it would be helpful just to go over some of the risks that are inherent with a successful phishing attack. So these are the risks that I think are most prevalent with email. The first of all is malware. You know, a successful attack could inject malware to your PC or network that's designed to remotely access your system or disrupt your business function. Ransomware, which is malware, but I brought this one out separately because it's really up and coming. COVID has really inspired criminals to come up with new and fun ways to try to trick you. And ransomware is an up and coming one. It's malware that encrypts specific files on your network or PC, rendering them inaccessible until you pay a ransom to the criminal for the decryption key. There was actually a pretty big event a couple of years ago in Europe. A hospital became a victim of ransomware, and it encrypted all of their patient files. And they didn't keep good backups of these files, so they actually tried to pay the ransom to get it back. The reason why this is such a popular attack is because it's very lucrative for customers. Now, I'm not here to say whether you should pay a ransom or not if you are a victim of this, but I would say that, you know, paying a ransom does encourage this kind of attack to keep going. And also, you know, say you pay a ransom and you get your files back, your system still has been compromised. It still has been, you know, I wouldn't trust those files anymore. So another risk is financial loss. Bad actors can gain access to computer information to conduct fraud or identity theft. And they can also gain access to systems to process fraudulent transactions, or they could even just trick you into processing the transaction for you, which could lead to financial loss. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is reputation loss. If a business were to experience a large enough security breach or financial loss to attract media attention, it could really lead to a loss of customer confidence in your ability to protect your customers' data. Now, again, what's your business scope? Banks, hospitals, this is a really big deal. We're a regulated industry. We house their finance, we hold their money, and we have their data. So they really do trust the bank to protect that information. And if we were to experience a big loss, we would lose reputation. So I have several examples. Excuse me. I have several examples of emails that you might see in your inbox. You could receive an email that looks like it's from a known vendor with an invoice attached. That's a pretty popular attack. So you want to make sure that you know the email address that the vendor uses. You want to make sure that the vendor actually sends you your invoice every month, that it's a normal thing. So I would be careful of those. An email that looks like it's from a delivery service, such as UPS, the United States Postal Service, FedEx, Amazon, or an e-card site that asks you to click a link to track a package or to get more information on something. The funny thing is, at the bank, we do something called social engineering testing. And this is actually, we send fake emails out to our staff to see if they click. And it's not to try to get anybody in trouble. It's just to make sure that our training is effective so people can spot phishing emails. And almost every time, whenever we do a fake email that has to do with an e-card, they click it. I don't know what it is about e-cards. Like, people get so excited that they're getting a card or an invitation to something that they just click it without thinking. And so we usually catch people on that one. You also might receive an email from a lawyer or a government agency demanding immediate action. The IRS, levies, taxes, or subpoenas, those things might freak you out, and it might get you to click it without thinking. So watch out for those. IRS scams are really big right now, so those are pretty prevalent. You might receive an email that looks like it's from an automated notification generated from your own company's network asking for immediate attention. A good example here would be your antivirus solution. So, I'll use Symantec as an example. That's a pretty popular antivirus solution. A criminal might craft an email that looks like it's from your Symantec system to try to get you to click a link to clear your computer of a virus. So you want to make sure that you know what automated emails that your company's network generates, so you know how to recognize them. You could receive an email that looks like it's from a known business customer requesting a transaction to be processed. Now, if you get emails from customers, it's almost impossible to know if that's who you're talking to via email. So I would recommend not processing anything based on an email alone, especially from a customer. Business customers, we have to watch out for that at the bank. We have a lot of business customers, so we watch out for emails like that. And then emails that look like it's from a known employee requesting a transaction be processed or an attachment. Back to my CEO example to a staff member. Also, employee emails to HR, that could be a good spear phishing attack as well. So this slide is kind of just how to spot a phishing email. And I think there are 8 good red flags on how to spot if an email is legitimate or not. The first, I don't know if you can see my mouse move or not, but the first one is a nondescript email address. If you get an email address, especially from a business that is nondescript, what business is going to use this as their email address? You really, businesses try to use their name or their brand in their email so that it stands out. So when you see a gobbledygook email address, that's usually a good sign that it's not legitimate. If the reply to address is different from the from address. Now, most email clients don't have a reply to field. You're not going to see this. What this refers to is spoofing. So an email comes with a header, and if you know how to do it, you can look into the email header and see exactly where the email came from. Now, most end users are not going to do this. So what I'd just like to point out is that just because the from address says webmail help desk with this email address, that does not mean that's where it came from. It is very, very easy to spoof a name, and it's relatively easy to spoof an email address. So you can't just take it at face value. If the subject line contains the word spam or exclamation point trying to get your attention, this is called tagging. So this is when your internet service provider or email service provider tries to tell you that something's funny. So you see the word spam in brackets, look at that email closely. Other words that you might see is quarantine, disarmed. Those are other tags that you could see in an email. So if you ever see a tag, definitely take heed with that email. Poor grammar, misspelling, punctuation errors. If you see a lot of grammatical errors in the body of an email, that's usually a pretty good indication that it's spam or malicious or phishing. A lot of these emails come from overseas, and the English language can be a hard one to get right. So if you see a lot of that, that's a really good red flag. Commands or threats. You must do this thing or this bad thing will happen. If it's an email coming from a business or a vendor, I mean, that's horrible customer service. We tend to try not to threaten our customers. So if you have a command or threat in an email, that's usually a good sign that it's probably fake. No contact information at the bottom. If it's just, a very generic signature, that could be a good sign. But I would say even if they include contact information at the bottom, don't rely on it. Always independently look up contact information to verify something. Don't ever use what's in the actual email. An odd-looking footer or signature, this could be a sign that it has come through some sort of automated emailing process. So that could be indicative of spam or malicious phishing. And then lastly, if you're asked to provide account information or if you're asked to click a link, that could be a really good sign that it's a phishing email. If you did not initiate contact with that person or are not expecting it. I can't demonstrate this on the slideshow, but this here is actually a Word document. And even though it says gmail.com, if I click the link in this example, it actually opens a Yahoo page. I just demonstrate that, just because the link says this does not mean that's where you're going to end up. So don't take anything in an email at face value. And the biggest of these 8 red flags, the 3 biggest examples, or the 3 biggies, are poor grammar, misspellings, and punctuation, commands and threats, and ask to provide account info and click link. Those are your 3 really big red flags when looking for a phishing email. So now I'm going to get into some best practices of some ways you can protect your business. Again, this is not an all-inclusive list, and I am by no means suggesting that you have to do all of these. One recommendation I have is restrict your company's email and internet systems to business purposes only. This goes a long way into protecting your business network because you're not surfing the web or accessing random emails. So that's usually a good policy to have in place. Have another policy in place not to open attachments or click on links in unsolicited or unexpected emails. Unsolicited emails are the ones, they're a little easier to spot. Those are the spam that you get, the ads. Those are a little easier to spot in this regard. I definitely would never click on links or open attachments on unsolicited emails. But unexpected is a little harder. You could get an email that looks like it's from your aunt with a funny cat picture, for example. and it looks like it's from her, it's her email address, and you think it's okay to open. But two things could be happening here. The first is that the email address and the sender's name could be spoofed. So what you're seeing is not exactly where it's coming from. The other thing that could be happening is your aunt's email account has been hacked, and a criminal is actually using her email account and contact information to send out a phishing or malicious email. So even if it is from a legitimate source, you do still have to be careful of it. I wouldn't process any transactions or perform any actions based on an email or phone call alone. If you're uncertain about something, you can always, if you have an IT department or a manager, you can always reach out to them to review an email to see if they think it's legitimate. But one thing that you can do to protect yourself is, the official term for it is out-of-band authentication. And this is just simply leaving the medium you're in, going to another medium to verify that email. So if you get a transaction request and you think it's legitimate, look up the phone number or the cell phone number of that person sending it and contact them independently and say, did you send this? Is this real? Initiating contact is probably one of the best ways, the best procedures you can have to protect yourself against a phishing attack. Never respond to things unless you have initiated contact in some way. Don't forward emails from your work address to your personal addresses. This really doesn't protect the business network in any way, but it protects your employees' devices. So back to my example when we do social engineering emails with employees and we send those fake e-card emails. So we did have a couple of incidences where the employee goes, well, this isn't business related, I'm not going to click it, which is great. But then they're like, well, I'm going to forward it to my home email address and click it when I get home. And though it protected the business, they likely would have infected themselves at home. Not accessing your personal email accounts from a company PC is a really good practice. Sometimes, like here at the bank, we have a lot of protections in place with email. And if an employee goes to their own Gmail account and starts clicking on links and downloading attachments on their bank computer, that could be really bad. So that bypasses all the protections we have in place. So we actually have it set up so that these email, Gmail, Yahoo, all these personal email accounts, they actually can't be accessed from the bank systems. They're blocked from doing so. So if you have that ability, that's a really good practice. But just having a policy saying, please don't access your personal email accounts on the bank or company computer is a good practice. Some other best practice recommendations. I would recommend performing some information security training. Information security training generally includes what acceptable use of the company systems are, and maybe even an acknowledgement of that policy. Password best practices, how long they should be, how you should construct your password, when you should change them, when they should expire. And then awareness training, and that's kind of what we're doing here, just making your employees aware of the different scams that are out there, the different emails that they could receive, and keeping it ever prevalent because, everything atrophies over time. So we do semi-annual information security training. We always do some sort of cybersecurity or information security training every 6 months. Keeping an up-to-date anti-malware solution and firewall. I will say that if you don't have these things on your network already, chances are your computer is infected somehow. It is really important to have anti-malware like Symantec, McAfee, ESET. There's a bunch out there, and firewall solutions on your system. And again, you get what you pay for, so I would be even leery of those free ones that are out there. I would really recommend investing in a good anti-malware solution. You want to keep your PCs and applications patched. There's a lot of operating systems out there, Windows, iOS, Linux, there's a ton out there, but all of them make patches to security issues that are found on a regular basis, and you want to make sure you're applying those patches. Also, if you're using third-party applications from vendors, they often release security patches as well. Some examples, Adobe Reader is a really popular one that's used, and they come up with monthly patches. You just want to make sure you're patching all of your applications to help secure your network. You could consider placing restrictions on who has access to what in your company. This is a practice called least privilege access, and it's the practice where you only give what is absolutely needed to an employee to do their job. So does every single person in your company need email? If not, take email away from those who don't need it. Does every single person in your company need access to all the customer information? If not, try to restrict access to it. It's a good way to try to kind of segment your business data so that it all isn't exposed at once. I would recommend utilizing any application security features that your company uses. There's a lot of security features that come with applications you might use, like setting password restrictions and use, password expiration, allowing access to certain functionality within an application. So just make sure you have security features turned on. You might want to consider isolating PCs to perform critical functions and not allowing internet or email use on them. So if your company uses uses ACH origination to originate transactions with your bank, or you use business internet banking at all, or you use mobile check deposit, or you scan checks through a scanner and deposit checks virtually to your bank, you might want to consider making that PC just for that purpose, or at the very least, not allowing any email or internet use on it, so that there's little danger of it becoming compromised. And then the last recommendation I have is just to check with your internet service provider to see if there are any protections that they have for you. I don't know if this is the case anymore, but I do know that Comcast used to give, I think, Symantec out for free. If you were a customer of theirs, there was an antivirus solution that you could use for free. There's also some tools out there to help protect your own domain against spoofing. So your internet service provider, or if you're large enough business where you have an IT department, they might have some ways to help protect your domain against being spoofed. And then the last slide I have for some best practice recommendation is consider developing and implementing an information security plan for your business. If you're from a regulated industry like a bank or the medical field, somebody is doing this for you. But if you're a smaller business, you might want to consider doing this at some level. And an information security plan, these are some of the components of it. An acceptable use policy, it's a policy that dictates to your employees how to use your systems, and you might even have a sign-off that they've read and acknowledge that policy. Disaster recovery or business continuity planning, that's trying to anticipate a disaster and how you're going to continue doing business if that disaster happens. And I would argue that we are in kind of a business continuity planning scenario now, pandemic planning. I know the bank did a lot of pandemic planning in the past, and it helped us greatly when COVID actually happened. We had some plans in place to implement. Customer information protection plan. This goes to protecting your customer data if you store it. Data backups and recovery. If you have data that is critical to your business, you should have a plan on how to back it up and how to recover it if you need it. This kind of goes back to ransomware. If your data becomes compromised, you want to be able to recover it somehow. Incident response planning, that is responding to a specific event, like your network becomes infected with a virus. What do? That's the incident, and you have a plan to respond to it. What regulators, if applicable, do you need to contact? When do you notify your customers? What do you need to do for forensics and how to recover your systems from that infection. Risk management, I could spend a whole day talking about risk management, but it's basically assessing the risks associated with your business, determining if those risks are acceptable or if you should put in some sort of controls to mitigate those risks. That's the basics of risk management. And then lastly, vendor management. If you rely heavily on third-party vendors to store data or to provide you with information technology, you want to make sure that the vendor you're using has these things in place. So just doing some sort of due diligence or background checks on your vendors to make sure that they have a good information and cybersecurity plan in place is a good practice. So my last slide is just a couple of references. There's one from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on cybersecurity essentials for business. There's a link to the FCC that they have kind of a little cybersecurity planner. And then the Better Business Bureau has 5 steps to protect your business. There's some good information there. So that's pretty much all I have. Anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Claudia, are you there?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I'm here. Hi, I'm here, my unmute button. No, this is great and this is really helpful. Nice to see everyone. I think you covered on some of the scams that, like as I said in the opening, that one of the reasons we started and wanted to offer this program is because we ourselves had this attack. And I've heard some similar email attacks. One, ours was someone posed as an employee and it looked identical to our email, but there were some grammatical errors. So some of those things that you pointed out, if I look back, like the signature really wasn't there, the typical signature from the person. So there were definite indicators, but I think in the heat, our days are filled, our email inboxes are flooded. It's so hard. The other one that I heard about was a gift card program, like, call me, I can't, I want to give, X gift cards to our employees. So if you go ahead and move money and, so I know some folks who were this close to actually following through with that and then caught themselves. So again, there's just such a variety of ways that they're coming through, and certainly both our business and personal emails. So, and I think there's so many attacks on seniors, to grandparents especially, I know, and it's gone beyond email, it's email and phone. So it's.
Yeah, phone calls are very effective for elder fraud. I have actually a true example of that. I have a great aunt who, answered the phone, and she would have sworn to her life that it was her grandson talking to her, and he convinced her to wire money to him. Elder fraud is very prevalent.
Yeah. Anne, go ahead. Feel free to unmute. It's a small group to unmute and ask your questions, Annabeth.
Thanks, Claudia. Hi, Brandon. It was just
Hello.
impressive. You're a Zoom hero, so don't think you can't do this via Zoom, because this was awesome. So I have 2 questions for you. One, and you may have answered in your last slide, wondering about some sample policies. We have policies, but I'd love to look at kind of the best practice sample policy to make sure that we've checked all the boxes and made sure we've done this right. Mostly thinking about educating staff, the whole idea of acceptable use. And I also sadly have someone that I know who got sucked into the gift card scam, Claudia, told that somebody was actually in her bank account and they'd put too much money in there and she had to go buy them gift cards to pay them back. And sadly, she bought the gift cards and lost a fair bit of money. She'll never do that again, but that was a hard scam phishing lesson. And then my other question, I think somebody just threw up on the chat was, is it possible to get a copy of these slides? Because, you know, 2 or 3 of them I feel like would educate a whole lot of people real fast. So thank you.
Yeah, I emailed the slides to Claudia. Feel free to distribute it. There's nothing proprietary in it. I have no problems with anybody using the slideshow. And as to information security training, you know, I'm hesitant to recommend any specific program, but you know, there are online options that you can use. So here at the bank, we contract with a third-party vendor, and we do online training with videos and slideshows. But I always do customized in-person training with new employees and any employee that might have made a mistake on the network. So we do a mix of in-person customized training and third-party, you know, training available for businesses. I don't know that I want. I don't know that I want to recommend a specific site or place. So
I have a specific question.
Sure.
My name is Barbara. We've been using QuickBooks for many years, and in an older version of QuickBooks, we had no problem printing our invoices right from QuickBooks. And there's some update or something that they did, and I'm having a big issue that I can't print invoices. So what I've been doing is printing, I can't print them straight from QuickBooks, so I print them out and then I send them via our business mail, which is Google Mail. But you know, there's it seems, and when I've been on the phone with Intuit, they say that there's an issue between the Google interface and QuickBooks. And what I've never thought of it as a security issue, that I can't just print straight from QuickBooks and that I send these via my Google Mail, but you're really making me think that that's not a really very good solution. And
I would say as long as the email that you're sending doesn't contain private, personal, or sensitive information. So I mean, I would argue that I don't know what the invoice is, but you know, if you're just emailing yourself an invoice, it probably has very little sensitive data. So you're probably okay.
Okay, thank you. That puts me at ease. Thank you.
Brandon, I think for the information security plan, one of the things we discussed internally was, you know, anything that had to relate with banking, a vendor change, or, you know, someone asking us bank information, whether it's, you know, for payroll purposes or for something else, that we're going to have multiple opportunities where we would connect with that person outside of the original communication. So, you know, I think that's one of the big pieces we've put in place to say, okay, if someone is requesting X, then we're going to follow these protocols, and, you know, we're going to call them, or we're going to, you know, reach them through another email or start a new chain, you know, or initiate a new email chain. Because had we done that, ours would have been completely avoided. So I think when the flag in your mind, you know, is raised, it's at least a moment to say, oh my gosh, should I have had a second opportunity? It's sort of like a second opinion. Anytime it comes to, and like you said right there, when it comes to actual personal information, which is banking information, your banking information and employees' banking information, that's sensitive. And so I'm requiring at least 3 points from, you know, outside of that original touch point. So that,
yeah, I would encourage, I would always encourage for you to train your staff and employees never to email personal or private information. Personal or private information is anything any like social security numbers, date of birth, account numbers,
Okay.
anything like that, when it's not secure. So remember, regular email is not secure. Some businesses do have an encrypted email service where you can send encrypted emails back and forth, and then you would want to build procedures around that. But what you're referencing is the out-of-band authentication, and never acting on an email alone goes a long way in protecting yourself against phishing.
Right. Yeah.
I have something else that I just was thinking about. With so many people working remotely and so many children and teenagers being at home and using maybe parents' computers, and going in and out of Zoom for remote learning and all kinds of things, I think it really opens up young people to get into the mix of this in a much bigger way, and interact with potentially parents' information, emails. They're very savvy about clicking around and having access, and how you separate the business information that's on a computer and email from what your families are doing. I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, kids are very, very technologically savvy. They can usually run circles around you when it comes to it, but they are also very susceptible to scams because they take everything online at face value. They think everything. I have a 15-year-old who watches TikTok, and he thinks that everything he sees on TikTok is real, and it is scary on how willing they are to believe online content.
Yeah, so this is definitely a much larger issue. It goes well beyond just the business scope.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Like you could do a program like this on a lot of different aspects of information security, from business continuity, risk management. There's a ton of content out there for information security.
I think your point, though, in terms of starting what's the best way to start or creating an information security plan? Do you have any tricks on where to start or who to start with? If you're a really small business, you may have an accountant, you're maybe, related with a bank. Who do you think they should go to, or where does it start if they don't have one in place?
Yeah, if you don't have an information security plan in place and you don't have an IT infrastructure, like an IT department, there are some good resources online. I would always start with acceptable use. How do you expect your systems to be used? And it does not need to be complicated and complex. It can be very back of the napkin. No personal email. It can be very specific for your business. But I would start with acceptable use, and then I would move on to awareness training, training your employees what to look for, especially with email, because email is probably your biggest security hole. And then after that, I would move on to making sure you're securing your systems with anti-malware solution and patching.
Okay.
Those are probably the biggest things of an information security program.
Thank you.
I have something else, unless somebody else does. In a small business like the one that we run, I use a Mac, so I try to use Safari whenever possible. I actually find that Safari will block some things, and I can't even access some of my banking from Safari. And I have to switch over to Google or to something else. I wonder if you, for those of us out here who are smaller than your bank, do you have any information about Firefox, Google, the different platforms that people are using and the security risks or advantages?
Well, they definitely all have their pros and cons. I would recommend using Chrome, Firefox, or Edge. Those are and using the latest version of them. Safari, I don't believe the bank supports all versions of Safari either. And I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know if it's not developed anymore or there's some security holes. But Chrome, Firefox, and Edge are the three big browsers that are constantly kept up to date. So I would recommend using one of those.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Great question.
Yeah, I can't access Greenfield Bank from Safari. I have to always check.
I don't believe we only support the newest version of Edge, Chrome, and Firefox. And I believe Internet Explorer we're still supporting. It's a really old browser, but it is unique in that it runs JavaScript, so some businesses still need to use Internet Explorer. So we do support that one as well.
Good to know. All right. Are there any other questions?
I have a quick one, if that's
ahead.
okay. I'm wondering if there's a website or a place somewhere where you might recommend to find a good sample kind of draft acceptable use policy. You know, the top few things to put in there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a specific example or website for you to go to, but
Okay.
you know, Googling it will bring up a ton of resources. Just Googling acceptable use policy for a small business will bring up a bunch of resources and give you some ideas.
Either that or get a job at the bank and then I get to see yours, right? That was a joke. It's a joke.
Claudia, it's Maura.
Hi, Maura.
I'm wondering, you've got a list of all of the chamber members.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any IT sophisticated businesses that are members of the chamber that might be helpful in putting together these policies and procedures?
Sure. I'm looking at one now that's very interesting. I'd have to think about that. There's so many. You know, I think.
I will say that you are probably going to be hard pressed to find a business that is going to share their internal procedures with you. Because they are security procedures, so they, you know, you try to keep them on the down low. So that's why I'm not offering to show you the banks. So yeah.
I have one. Believe it or not, I'm in. I think is it Amazon? Looks like there's Smile Amazon acceptable use, and it goes on about no illegal, harmful, or offensive use or content, no security, unauthorized access, no network abuse, no email or other message. I mean, there's a lot out there. So we could also, I could see if I can find some other policies that we might be able to share. But like you said, it might be difficult to find someone who's going to share. But let me think about a small business who might have something that I don't have to share their name, but maybe just the policy.
I just think there must be consultants out in our area that can help with something like that.
Well, and I appreciate that. I mean, I'm not asking anyone else to do the work. I just thought there might be, you know, given the issues that we have, especially with everybody working remotely, that there's probably some kind of like top 5, you know, like you had the top 1, Brandon, by saying, you know, no personal anything on your work computer, which we've certainly been saying forever. But to just spell that out without having it be, you know, so excessive that people don't read it or they get blurred, you know, like all those things we click on. Oh yes, I've read the privacy policy that was 14 pages long, right? And we all click and say thank you. So, but I will Google that and find it, but thank you all. Those were some really helpful suggestions, and I'm sure there's probably some really good samples out there. I found this whole session very helpful, and even as someone who has been trying to get people to stay away from clicking on unacceptable links for a while, there was some really clear, helpful suggestions. So thank you all.
Thank you for being here. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was just going to say, so just some things in an acceptable use policy would be, you know, how you expect your employees to use the system, how you expect them to back up data if they're responsible for that, media storage, how they are going to use their passwords and construct their passwords, how they're going to use their email. Let's see. Registering software, how they're going to use the internet, how they're going to protect against viruses. And usually what you want to do is have an acknowledgement that they physically sign and say, I acknowledge this and I read it and I will follow it.
That's a key point.
Thank you very much.
And I think you said in the beginning that not only no personal email, but to not share personal information. So that was a key start to that, right? And looking at malware, because for most of us, we may not have a secure network. So this is really helpful. And if I see anything along the way, that I'll get those key points from you, Brandon, and we can add those to our notes when we share the video that you just shared. Because I tried to take them all down and I think I missed a few. But terrific. So if there are any other questions, I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I hope that was helpful. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so I appreciate feedback. Anything I can do to improve it.
Very good.
Good job, Brandon.
Yeah, really helpful and
Clark.
really relevant right now. We really needed this.
Thank you.
Thank you. That
Thank
was
you
terrific.
all.